Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
We begin instead this morning. We resist the urge to point and laugh and instead actually focus upon some rather poignant events and experiences endured yesterday by many of our friends, colleagues, partners, lovers, bosses, employees, whoever it may be, of the 3 million people who hail from European Union countries who have elected to make their lives here either in the short term or the long term. To be told yesterday that you have jumped the queue, it seems to me that the rest of us owe you a hearing today. We should find out how you feel about that. I wondered if you could call me in the first instance and describe the process by which you jumped the queue and ended up being my GP, or the process by which you jumped the queue and ended up being my studio producer. Actually, don't ring in. That would just be weird. We need to get proper callers on. We can't just take calls from you. So sorry. But the process by which you jumped the queue to become, well, everywhere you go in most major cities and towns, you will encounter innumerable people who have made lives here having come from elsewhere. If you go back far enough on your own family tree, you will almost certainly find somebody who has come here and made a life here after originally hailing from elsewhere. And that line of Theresa May's yesterday really, I don't know, it stayed with me, actually. It's often the way, isn't it, with the really dodgy stuff, in that you don't necessarily clock how dodgy it is at first. Especially as Theresa May, the architect of the hostile environment, the politician probably more responsible for the Windrush scandal than any other, the politician who, of course, sent those go-home vans out into the streets of these islands, the politician who stood up at the Police Federation conference in Manchester in 2015 and accused them of scaremongering, and then last week on this radio station flatly denied that she'd ever used the words. Theresa May, who, of course, as Home Secretary, presided over a veritable catalogue of catastrophe and took responsibility for precisely nothing. But British politics being British politics, and Brexit having broken everything, she ends up Prime Minister, where, despite recognising that Brexit is a ridiculous idea, she's pressed ahead with her plans and ambitions and deserves, I think, some credit, some support for keeping the headbangers at bay, the headbangers who can't count. That's the official explanation being given for Steve Baker's failure to bring together the 48 letters that he insisted he had. He had 48 plus, and a dozen or so still waiting. It's not over yet. That's part of the reason why it would be foolish to giggle too heartily, because if you are still clinging to the notion that rational analysis, reason and evidence-based politics will eventually win, then just have a look at what Ivanka Trump's being busted for today. Precisely the same misdemeanor that her father claimed Hillary Clinton should be sent to jail for. So you'll forgive me for not feeling very optimistic about the mechanisms of democracy at the minute, but in the case of the ERG, it's not the mechanisms of democracy that matter, it's the mechanisms of basic arithmetic. They can't do the numbers, which is part of the reason why we're not talking about them today, just in case they do, and then we end up looking silly instead of them looking silly. I want you to call me and tell me about jumping the queue. 03456060973. I want to hear your story about how you jumped the queue when you came here, set up a business perhaps, or went to work for the NHS, or took a job that arguably other people born here were a little bit reluctant to take. Interesting story in the news today about a fish and chip shop owner who can't find staff for love nor money. But I'm interested in you jumping the queue, how that makes you feel. Oh, one friend who's been here for 28 years. I was reading his account on Facebook last night about being told he's a queue jumper. It's quite incredible language, actually. And this is, I think, the moment at which that tendency I have, which I think might be kind of low-level chauvinism, to feel sorry for Theresa May because of some of the forces that she is pitted against, goes out of the window. You just need to be reminded, don't you, about what she appears to represent. There's no way that she could have presided over the Windrush scandal without somewhere deep inside fundamentally believing that people of colour are deserving of a different kind of justice, a different kind of protection from people who are the same colour as her. That Middle England vicar's daughter, who arguably or supposedly represents Christian values, seems quite happy to sit back yesterday and malign 3 million people as cheats. Because if you jump a queue, my friends, you're a cheat. If there is one rule that visitors to Britain learn within their first 5 minutes of arriving here, that is that queuing is a national pastime, pretty much up there with football, darts, and fighting. There are few things Brits like more than queuing. So I'm not over-egging the pudding, I don't think. I'm not suggesting that she sort of sought to subvert the British paradigm of queuing, but queue jumping is cheating. Queue jumping actually is one of those low-level transgressions that bugs the hell out of us. And that's why, although I'm happy to accept that she misspoke, if Downing Street get in touch in the next hour and tell us that it was an accident or she didn't think it through or she'd like to apologise for using that phrase. That's why I think the employment of that phrase yesterday was considerably more obnoxious and offensive than we realise. She called 3 million people who live, work and love here cheats. She accused them of cheating. She called them queue jumpers. Downing Street has subsequently put out a statement which appears to deny that she called them queue jumpers. So, with your permission, I'll dig out the tape. This is the sort of thing we should do before we come on air, Beth. We've got to stop producing the programme in the first 10 minutes of the monologue. Can we get the tape of Theresa May saying queue jumpers? And then I'd like to know from you about how you jumped the queue, 0345 6060973. And more pertinently, perhaps, this morning, how you feel after 2.5 years of uncertainty, 2.5 years of wondering whether the life that you've made, the work that you've done, the taxes that you've paid would be respected. How you feel after 2.5 years about being told essentially your very existence here, your very presence here, your very residence here is a result of you being a cheat, a queue jumper, a barger. We used to call them a queue barger. In the dinner queue at school, there were few crimes more egregious than queue barging. And it was one of the few things that the little people could unite to condemn the big people for. So if a prefect pushed in and tried to get his dinner before we got ours, or supper, as I think we called it, tried to get his supper before we got ours, then 7 or 8 little fourth formers could actually make enough noise to make sure that the other prefects told their fellow prefect to get to the back of the queue, because you're not allowed to queue jump. You're not allowed to push in. And that, to me, speaks... Well, it speaks of a world view that Theresa May has that I think is what I would loosely describe as middle-class nativism. It's not the knuckle-dragging violence of less educated nativists. And, you know, I find few things more disgusting at the moment than the attempt by public school-educated Nazi sympathisers pretty much these days, but public school-educated racists to somehow pretend that racism is an attribute of the working class. Tell that to the people that chased the fascists out of Cable Street. It's absolutely nonsense. This anti-elite rhetoric is entirely trumped up by incredibly privileged, wealthy people to pretend that if you're working class, you must be a racist. It drives me potty, actually, and I'm not even working class. But imagine for a moment how Theresa May views these 3 million people. And look me in the eye and tell me that she sees them as equals. She sees them as worthy of her respect. She sees them as intrinsic and integral parts of our society. Look me in the eye and tell me that she thinks that, and then explain why she called them queue jumpers. So, your stories of queue jumping, your feelings about being labelled a queue jumper, and also your thoughts if you're not actually one of the 3 million. Your thoughts on what that means, that phrase. I'd be happy to be challenged on whether or not it's as significant as I think it is. But I remember looking at the Windrush story and thinking, yeah, she's a middle-class racist. Not in a, she'd never sort of throw bricks through windows or wave placards or go on marches, but there's a sort of quiet acceptance that the circumstances of her birth somehow render her superior to somebody born elsewhere. You read Fintan O'Toole's new book, or indeed his columns in the Irish Times, and he attributes the entire Brexit disaster to this utterly unjustified belief that the geography of your birth is somehow an indicator of your worth. Ooh, that's good. Can we write that down? The geography of your birth is somehow an indicator of your worth. Sounds a bit Gilbert and Sullivan. And that's where we are. And you look at these people like Rees-Mogg and Duncan Smith, and you think, what possibly gave you the notion that you were a better quality human being than anybody else? It can't be your intellect. I appreciate in the case of Rees-Mogg, you've had an incredibly privileged upbringing and a highly expensive education. And I appreciate in the case of Ian Duncan Smith that you like to pretend that you have. But when you look yourself, when you look into the depths of your soul, and you seek justification for your belief that you're entitled to rule, that you're entitled to somehow lord it above the rest of us, that you're entitled to legislate? What is it you see that you think gives you these qualifications? Because it ain't your brains, boys. No, it's the fact that we were born in England and we've cultivated a sort of patrician drawl. Absolutely unbelievable. And Theresa May, for all her pursed-lipped sanctimony, actually, I think, subscribes to a very similar school of thought. Because what else have you got? Why else would she actually, without realising how offensive it was, comfortably and casually describe you or your husband or your wife, your mother or your father, your colleague, your classmate, as a queue jumper, as a cheat, as someone who is not to be trusted, someone who will game the system, someone who is not quite playing with a straight bat, someone who is a little bit iffy, a little bit dodgy, a little bit sly. Why? Because they're foreign. 3 million queue jumpers. Weird. And then, of course, because she adds quickly afterwards, well, Indian software developers and Australian engineers, she thinks she's got a fig leaf to describe what she's just done. But she hasn't, has she? She's called you a cheat. She's called you, in many ways, a liar. She's called you someone who refuses to obey by the rules and profits while everybody else does so. A queue jumper is a cheat. Why did our Prime Minister call 3 million of our citizens, our residents, I beg your pardon? Why do you think she called them all cheats yesterday? And that's a question you can answer wherever you were born. It's one of those growers, isn't it? It's one of those ones that the more you think about it, the more egregious it becomes, actually. How dare Theresa May call you a queue jumper? You obeyed the rules, you pay your taxes, you have abided by all that is asked of you, and you are now being told by the Prime Minister of the country that you've lived in for X years that you're a queue jumper, you're a cheat. And of course, 1 million people from this country living in the European Union are also queue jumpers. Reciprocal rights of free movement rendered a negative by a Prime Minister who, well, if she's not racist, you need to tell me what she is, okay? Well, how else do you explain describing somebody as fundamentally cheating simply by dint of having been born foreign? I can't see anything else. Can you? Enrico is in Wembley. Enrico, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
First of all, I would like to thank you for what you're doing.
You're very welcome.
You're one of the few that are saying the things that they are.
Telling the truth. One of the few that is telling the truth. And it's not a moral issue. It's simply the fact that I wasn't embedded in either team or side before the referendum, so I've been able to see everything clearly since the referendum. And thank you for your thank you. You're welcome.
So, I came here now 13 years ago. I'm married with a British citizen, and I've got a young daughter. And the thing is, I did my Erasmus program here in 2001, and I decided to come back to this country because I really like the way things are in this country. As you can see, I'm very emotional about it.
I bet you are.
And because people think about it, we are just coming to get jobs or other things. The reality is, obviously, this is a great country to live in, and because things are run different from my original country.
Where are you from originally, Enrico?
I'm from Italy.
Okay.
And I see that so many immigrants are coming here, not just because of the job, and you never hear this on the news, because compared with other countries, and I don't know about Germany or France, things are working much better. But the thing is, obviously, I was listening yesterday to the people that, the guy in the city that lost his job and the other guy in the Netherlands that won't be able to work anymore. I can tell you, not just now with what yesterday I was very, very down after I heard what she said. And the thing is,
do you think she realises that people are people? I mean, it's to take it personally is to me the most natural reaction, and yet I can't understand how she'd let the words come out of her mouth.
It all started when she was still at the Home Office. Don't forget, with the hostile environment, it's something that was mentioned on Newsnight very, very briefly, and she changed legislation. Do you know? I'm married with this British citizen, and I've got a daughter, but still, had I broke my freedom of movement by sleeping rough in a park, I could have been a raid from the Home Office, from the border agency. I could have been ejected from the country, even if I was married, but this is with a job, okay? And that's something that she changed the rules. So obviously, you can see that. You were mentioning about the vicar's daughter.
She does. It is hard to see any other analysis that doesn't cast her as thinking that because you are from Italy, you're somehow not worth as much as me.
But also something that people don't mention all the time. When we say, I can't tell you after the referendum, I didn't sleep at night. I had nightmares.
Yes, I'm sure.
Knowing that you live in a country where you have no rights and everything was kept completely, and despite having my own business, running my own business.
How many people do you employ?
No one, because I've got subcontractors.
Sole trader.
You know, it just but anyway, I help. I work in the disability sector, and I help people with disabilities, and I think I do make a difference.
So you've come over here, you've jumped the queue, and you've set up a company that helps disabled people get back into the workplace.
Not necessarily, but
right.
It's just it's a bit complicated.
Okay.
People,
You're not going to fit into one of my glib and neat little sound bites, Enrico, which is probably just as well. But let's not beat about the bush. You did jump the queue, my friend. You jumped that queue.
And don't forget, I had to fill up 85 pages of form to get permanent residency, and I sent half kilos because I was self-employed, director of a limited company with VAT. I had to send off half kilos of paper to get permanent resident. Then I had to spend £150 to do an exam to prove that I can speak English because I didn't have a degree from this country. Okay, and the citizenship in total cost me £1,700. It's not £1,000 because the fee you have to put the English exam, life in the UK, and everything else. So a lot of people, I feel fortunate because I kept my Italian passport and I got my British passport, and now my daughter will get a double nationality. And my wife in 3 years, because we've been married for 3 years, she will be able to get the Italian passport with €300 in 2 years.
Can I ask you, for the benefit of somebody listening to this who's a little sceptical, I don't mean people who are just who enjoy other people's misfortune. I think it's clear that Theresa May would have kept them very happy yesterday, but decent people who perhaps don't quite understand why you're so personally affronted by this. They'll say, "Oh no, we don't mean you. I'm sure you'll be okay.
Of course,
you're married to."
All the time.
Just tell them why it does hurt you.
Because basically you feel completely undervalued. You feel that you came here to take jobs of someone else's. You have rights one day, and the following day the referendum goes on. I remember David Cameron saying on the news, "Oh, we can't guarantee anything," and being treated and used as a bargaining chip. Can you imagine? I'll say to natives, how would you feel if tomorrow you were to wake up knowing that you don't have any rights, and your rights, you don't know what is going to happen to your life? I mean, I can imagine during the war would have been worse, but it's just in peacetime, and it's something that the thing is, I tell you, I decided to come back to this country because it's a great country, and I can still, but the country is completely changed. It just is so much split, and I'm not sure hand on heart that I want my daughter to grow here.
Well, she doesn't speak for me, Enrico. She doesn't speak for the massive majority of people listening to this programme, and indeed I would argue the massive majority of people in this country. Neither does she speak for everyone who voted Leave. There will be millions of people who voted Leave who are profoundly affronted by what is now being done in their name. So take it from me that the decent British people of these islands thank you and welcome you and look upon you as an equal. And deep down you know that. It's just all the noise that's telling you otherwise. And when it comes out of a Prime Minister's mouth, I can see why it gives you proper pause. There's no positive spin on this, is there? That phrase, queue jump, these speeches are not written on the hoof. They go over them with fine tooth combs, and they have decided to call you a cheat.
I know, but obviously you know that they are targeted to a certain audience.
Well, what audience do you think? How would you describe that audience? Because that's quite interesting now, to know what constituency she thinks she's actually appealing to.
A certain type of people will say, yes, we got what we wanted.
What did they want?
Those European that they come in and without any, now they will have to jump the queue. And don't forget what you mentioned yesterday about India. People voted, so it would be easier from the rest of the world. She could have controlled the immigration from the rest of the world. It was a choice not to do it.
No, of course she could have done. She could have afforded the same ease of access to this country to non-EU nationals that she argues EU nationals enjoy. Enrico, I mean what I say. I promise you that she does not speak for Britain. She doesn't even speak for the Leave voter. And far be it from me to cast myself as a defender of their moral rectitude, but I know several people who voted Leave, and none of them would be comfortable with the idea of you being called a cheat. This is an interesting analysis from Made in Scotland on Twitter. May's use of the term queue jumper speaks to the demographic that had the best years of high employment, good health care, good social housing, and is now being gaslighted into believing that foreigners rather than the Tories are to blame for the loss of these things. There might be something in that. Enrico, thank you. Rokas is in Hither Green. Are you a queue jumper, Rokas?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Just have to say, First-time caller, huge fan. I'm really nervous at the moment.
No, it's only me. It's only me. You've done a million
really,
tougher
really emotional
things.
as
Why?
well.
Why are you emotional, mate?
I just want to tell you my story, probably, the background, how I came to UK. So let's just say first time I came in here, it was in 2005, I believe.
Yes.
So I went to bakery to work in there, but basically I was in Lithuania, very good professional as a graphical designer, so I had a number of years of experience and stuff like that. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna work in a factory for a while, then I'm gonna find a job and just gonna move forward, right? Never happened. Probably lost around 4K pounds and went back to Lithuania.
Okay.
After that, I decided I'm gonna give it another try. So I went back and I started working in a chicken factory. So basically the chicken factory, oh my God, it's like modern slavery, imagining working in the cold.
Yeah.
You're waking up during the night because your fingers sore. And well, after the 3 months or so, I became a quality inspector in chicken factory just because I could talk English properly, After a year or so, I then decided, well, that's not the job for me, I'm a professional. So I moved to London, couldn't find a job there just because I was sending my CVs and nobody was replying. So I went to agencies. So for example, I said, I'm a very good professional in Lithuania. Do you have any jobs for me?
As a as a designer.
As a designer, yeah. So basically the agencies were telling me, do you have UK experience? I'm like, no, but I have 7 years in Lithuania.
Yes.
We work differently in here, you see. So I said come on, Photoshop in Africa is Photoshop. So basically, through my friend, I actually found a job as a graphical designer. So I started more as a web developer, learning, and currently I'm in a big corporate company, as a senior front-end developer. So that's my kind of story of.
And I presume you've rung up to apologise for queue jumping, have you, and plucking all those filthy chickens. You should say sorry to the people of Britain, Rockers, for jumping the queue and being a successful tax-paying professional who's clawed his way up from the floor of a chicken factory to the web developing department of a major tech company. Oh man, how did you feel? I mean, I'm not patting myself on the back when I ask this question. I just wonder whether you'd realised how offensive that phrase was before you tuned into the radio this morning.
He was. I mean, I'm very, very following you and, all the news that's happening as well. I met my missus in here and I have a son, so I'm just as well as the last caller.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I want to raise my kids in here, because they're going to get,
the son of a queue jumper, the daughter of a queue jumper. It's such an odd phrase. I can't quite see why she employed it, except to appeal to the ugly rump of this country that's already responsible for utterly unnecessary decline and division.
I don't know, James.
Well,
I just feel angry. I'm no longer. Actually, I wanted to apply for a British citizenship and British passport and everything. I have all my stash of documents for the residency. Obviously, now it's no point of sending it.
Why do you say that? Just because?
Just because. I mean, we're gonna have to do that you're no longer gonna get the resident, isn't it? You're gonna have to.
I hear you, but I say it again. I think I'm going to say it to everyone this hour. She doesn't speak for me, and she doesn't speak for most people. I'm not sure who she does speak for, but the answers to that question that we're coming up with collectively so far are not pretty. And she didn't need to do that, the Prime Minister. She didn't need to do that. I've always said that eventually it will all come down to immigration, less freedom and fewer foreigners. But that's just because that's how I read the runes. If I was Prime Minister, it would not have come down to less freedom and fewer foreigners. Just a combination of circumstance and Theresa May's track record that, to my mind, made it inevitable. And that speech yesterday made it reality. And they're still at it, These men who would claim that they could do a better job of running the country or negotiating Brexit couldn't even organise a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister that they said publicly was in the bag. And still, I glance up and there's a television screen in front of me and there is the mewling pencil himself, Jacob Rees-Mogg, in front of a banner that now says Global Britain. Is that like the People's Front of Judea in relief to the ERG's Judean People's Front? And sitting alongside him on this panel, with a bloke who bears an uncanny resemblance to a sort of elderly Tom Conti, actually. But David Davis is there as well. David Davis, whose ignorance about the most fundamental basics of Brexiting have still not been addressed, and he's still at it. This is the weird bit, isn't it? Is you literally have in your hand a lump of moon rock, and you hand it to David Davis. He licks it, and he goes, cheese. It's just unbelievable. So yesterday he wrote these words down. So it's not even as if he could be excused a sort of mind fart. He actually wrote them down. He said, if we need to leave with no deal and negotiate a free trade agreement during the transition period, so be it. Over 2 years as the Secretary of State for leaving the European Union. And he doesn't even understand that most basic of principles. If we leave with no deal, as you know, as I know, as my cat knows, and my 10-year-old knows, there is no transition period. The transition period is a condition of the withdrawal agreement. So David Davis still standing, and here he is, just reaching for the microphone. Give it to me. I used to be in the SAS, part-timers. And he actually says, if there is no deal... I would tell you what he'd say, but someone's just nicked my screen. If there is no deal, then so be it. If we need to leave with no deal and negotiate a free trade agreement during the transition period, so be it. That's not just like, I forgot to cross the T or dot the I. That is David Davis, yet again, after 2.5 years of doing this, standing up in public and saying, without realising it, I don't understand anything, but my arrogance is such that I'm going to tell you what's going on, despite the fact that I don't understand anything. Tempting to give him the Nadine Dorries Award for weapons-grade Brexit ignorance today, but it is only 22:11, and the competition is getting fiercer by the minute. But just think about that. Think about that for a moment. If you believed these men, if you believed them, it is not your fault. But you must now surely recognise that they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. There is no transition period if there is no deal, if there is no withdrawal agreement. Full stop, Dave. Literally full stop. But you still don't get it. And not only has that been pointed out to you repeatedly since you wrote it yesterday, but you're still taking invitations and popping up on the telly at some ludicrous press conference with a bunch of fellow headbangers, pretending that you haven't made a complete muppet of yourself on the biggest stage yet again. And it's the people who still trust you that I really feel protective towards. But we're not talking about them today. We're talking about someone else I feel protective towards. Well, 3 million people I feel protective towards. As I feel protective towards all citizens being maligned and insulted by politicians. And today it is the 3 million European Union citizens living here who have been called cheats by our Prime Minister, queue jumpers, the most egregious of offences that you can undertake on these islands, to jump a queue. And somewhat ironically, in an age where irony often seems dead, I just Googled Downing Street queue jumping to try and find the denial from Downing Street that I saw earlier that they'd queue jumped. And do you know the only story I could find? The first story to come up on Downing Street queue jumping contains the headline, David Cameron filmed jumping the queue to purchase socks in JD Sports. What a time to be alive. Just in case you think I'm making all this up, here's Theresa May's speech yesterday.
The United Kingdom is a country that values the contribution that immigration has made to our society and economy over many years. Immigration will continue to make a positive contribution to our national life. But the difference will be this. Once we've left the EU, we will be fully in control of who comes here. It will no longer be the case that EU nationals, regardless of the skills or experience they have to offer, can jump the queue ahead of engineers from Sydney or software developers from Delhi.
You jumped the queue, and I'd like you to say sorry. Jana is in Ealing. Jana, could you tell me how you jumped the queue and then apologise to the rest of the country, please?
Hi. Yeah, I jumped the queue very, very high because I'm an athlete. I can jump high. No, I'm just why I am calling to say, and like
Yes.
a previous callers, I'm very emotional,
Of course.
as usual, because I came to this country legally. With no jump any queues. Yes. I've been invited to
No, you did. She's saying that people who came here legally jumped the
Okay,
queue.
but I was invited to jump, so by some British Federation of Wrestling, they asked me to come and help the British athlete to develop in the sport of wrestling, so I did. And then when I did, everyone was happy. But then I fell in love with my husband and I decided to stay. And I thought, why not to give a try here and compete for this country, which is I did. And I did very well. And everybody was happy when the results was coming. But they didn't like the fact that I'm foreigner. So they tapped me on the back and said, thank you for your all great results, for medals and everything. But we don't like you foreigner. And media gave me such a negative kind of representation at the time. And everybody thought, why is she here? Why other athletes don't go to competition and compete? She's taking their spot, which is there was quite frankly zero of people to compete in the first place.
What did you win, if you don't mind me asking?
I won the 2 medals from the European Championship, which is have never been done in this country, so I'm kind of a first woman to do it.
Yes.
I don't try to be big-headed. I'm just
no, don't worry. There's nothing you can say that would make you the most big-headed person in this conversation. Jana, don't worry.
Thank you. I don't really like to say what I do, but
I demand that you tell me.
Yes. So Commonwealth Games silver medal, Combat Games silver medal. I was multiple times British champion, and I won lots of tournaments as well. But this is not the point. My point is...
It is the point. So you were born in Ukraine. You compete internationally for Great Britain and England. You've won a hatful of medals. And yesterday our Prime Minister told you that you jumped the queue to come here.
Yeah, I have a little view on that. And I think she maybe said that because so many people from Brexiteers telling her, oh, she's this, she's that, she's incompetent. So she maybe said that remark to make them feel better.
Yeah, so she's throwing red meat to the nasty bits of the party.
I think she may be trying to say that. So people who very upset with her about Brexit at the moment, she said, no, I'm actually on your side. They are bad. I
see. So there's lots of people are getting worried about Brexit. What can I do to keep those sort of people happy? I know, I'll insult loads of foreigners and they'll think I'm great again.
Also, I always listen to your program. I'm really, really thankful for everything you say. Yes. And it's just really nice to hear a British person saying that.
Saying the truth, telling the truth, speaking facts. That's all I do.
Yes,
I don't know why it's making such a rumpus.
People hate to hear that. People hate to hear that because when they try to accuse me of, where are you accent from? I was like, okay, if I lose my accent, what kind of accent do you want me to get? Because all over Britain, even British people, they speak different accents. I said, which accent do you want me to get? And another thing about Theresa May, in 2012, I was due to compete in the Olympic Games because I was very close to do that. So, but then it was decision down to her because she was a foreign secretary.
Home secretary.
And because it was pressure. Yeah, Home Secretary, sorry. Yes, right. And it was due to her to decide shall they give me a passport before, because I would get it if I wouldn't get married. Right. But in the media, they made this story like I marry my husband just for the passport. But actually, I married him before the Olympic Games, and it's actually ruined my chances to go to Olympic Games, if that makes sense to you. Because my visa changed that for 2 more years to stay in the country before you get the passport, which is a big mistake we've done.
And she made that decision. That went all the way to the Home Office, did it? And they decided not to let you.
She declined that because she had so much pressure.
Hostile environment,
Jana. Saying,
hostile environment. She wanted to create a scenario in which it was really, really hard for people like you to...
Yeah, because I believe that was a great chance for me to do a change for the sport, not for myself, because, in sport it's like, today I'm a champion, tomorrow I get injured, that's it, I'm gone. But for the young generation who would be inspired by that medal, who would get funding.
Do you think you would have got a medal? Do you think
I think I would do pretty well.
I think I would have done as well, Jana. I don't know if you can... I think if they chucked me in the high dive, I'd have given Tom Daly a run for his money.
I went to Canada.
Yes.
I went to Canada before Olympic Games, and I was a sparring partner for the girl who won Olympic Games previously. And because I was with her, she won another medal, and I was pretty damn close with her.
So you know in your bones that you could have done it. You know in your bones. I get it. I know who you are. I'm playing Cluedo. You are Jana Rattigan.
Yeah.
And you are the real deal. A multi-medal winner, British, Ukrainian-born wrestler. But of course, people listening to this will go, well, she's not British. Born of foreign extraction in a foreign country, just like Boris Johnson, Jana. Just like Boris Johnson, who the last time I checked hadn't won any Olympic medals. Which is only because there isn't an Olympic medal for lying.
Seriously, it's not even about the medals or anything. I just feel very sad for the lots of people here because I I interact with people every day. I don't care where you come from, what your skin color. In fact, my husband is a mixed race, and half part of his family is Jamaican, and I love their culture. I learn their history, and I'm going to teach my child that I have with my husband. But before that, everybody was saying, "Oh, you don't know nothing." But I passed my life in the UK from the first time, and actually, my husband, who was born here, he didn't know half of the question, and I said, "That's how foreigners sometimes actually better involved in your life."
No, I think there is. Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend who's done the ceremony, done the test, and there were a lot of questions on it that I couldn't answer, and I'm a know-all. Yeah, no, thank you so much. I'm so sorry for your plight. Rest assured that the massive majority of decent British people do not think you are a queue jumper or a cheat. Some people perhaps not bright enough to understand the conflation that Theresa May deliberately concocted yesterday. Some people not nice enough to be uncomfortable with it, but the massive majority of us disgusted by it. And the more we think about it, the more disgusted we are. It's 10:48. Dear James, please apologise on my behalf to all of our citizens born outside these lands. These views are not everyone's here. I sent Farage 2 texts last night. Please read them if you can. I can't call in. I'm driving to Warrington to talk to our office there about Europe. I have enough trouble, mate, going through my own emails and texts without necessarily double checking on anybody else's. But if you want to resend the content of it, it'll be easier for me to read it out. You are far from alone. Lots of people feeling a degree of shame today, having heard their Prime Minister essentially describe their neighbours and friends of being cheats, in this case of being queue jumpers. Everything from a medal-winning athlete who has become a British citizen after moving here from the Ukraine, through to a fellow who started life on the factory floor in a chicken factory before rising up to the graphic design department, web development department of a major tech company. I'm just looking for there was a tweet from Nigel that really touched me, because he mentioned that he'd felt compelled to pull over in his car, so keen was he to contribute to this programme, and that always attracts my eye in a way, and then I always lose the flipping tweet, don't I? But I won't lose this one. I'll dig it out in the course of the programme. But it was essentially about his friend who's a midwife, and now, of course, a queue jumper. Here it is, Nigel Davis. Thank you. Oh, I've lost it again. I'll tell you what, I'll take some lessons in how to present a radio programme, and you crack on. Theo Ushwood is on the line, thankfully, LBC's political editor, who's been attending today's meeting of... Well, I saw it on the telly. The Mewling Pencil was there. David Davis was there. Was that Peter Bone and a bloke who looks like Tom Conti? Are they not the ERG? Are they the GRE?
They're the ERG.
What?
They are the ERG.
Hey?
It was a Global Britain ERG event at the Emmanuel Centre. Just so your listeners know, James, the Emmanuel Centre is not Wembley Stadium. It is not huge. It's a hall just off Great Tufton Street in Westminster, and it's used for small events. 96 seats. Right. Half of those, just over half of those were full. 51, in other words.
Oh, so they've got the 51 then? They've got the 48?
No. 27 of those were journalists.
Oh.
Only 10 MPs were there, plus the 2 on the panel.
Was Ian Duncan Donuts there?
He wasn't there, no, he wasn't there.
So you didn't get called daft again for counting?
No, I didn't get daft.
For new listeners to the programme, the last time this shower gathered in public to claim that they had loads and loads of support, Theo Ushwood had the audacity to point out that there were only about 3 people present, at which point Ian Duncan Donuts called him daft, in public and on tape.
14. There were 14 MPs on that occasion. On this occasion, there were 12. And this was not about...
there were none.
This was not about the heart, James. This was about facts, hard facts.
Yes.
We have 17 myths in a 23-page document, all exploded by the ERG. And Lord Lilly was there, Jacob Rees-Mogg was there when it comes to the Customs Union. They've gone back, they've tacked back, James, to try and change the Prime Minister's policy. Because
so we're not having a leadership challenge then?
No, that's off. Although Jacob Rees-Mogg did get very tetchy when we started asking him about it.
Mr. Rees-Mogg, what would it take to withdraw your letter? Would it take adopting this report? And David Davis, have you put your letter in yet?
I'm sorry, those questions have nothing to do with today's report, but I will answer any questions anybody has on other matters later on. So would you like to ask a question about the report, or shall I go to...
This report was adopted by the government, lucky enough to the ERG to tone down the rhetoric and move on.
The Prime Minister said yesterday that what she said is what she said and she's not going to change it. So I think that's too hypothetical. Unless, David,
I think we are in a house of God. There's more joy in heaven over one sinner that repenteth than over 99 just men who have no need of repentance. So let us hope that everybody coalesces on a sensible view.
If you fail to get the number of letters that it looks as if you have, is the plan now to come back at the time of the meaningful vote? If you do, won't that be too late?
I refer you to the answer I gave to the Telegraph a moment ago. If anyone wants to talk to me about other matters, I'll talk to them later. Let's stick to the report here.
Jacob Rees-Mogg has suddenly lost his mojo.
Have they all gone quite mad?
They said they had the 48 letters. We were told repeatedly they had the 48 letters, but the 48 letters have not materialised.
Have they got 99 red balloons? As a sort of consolation prize?
No red balloons.
Did you ask the question I told you to ask?
No.
Why not?
Well, I couldn't get in. Couldn't get my question in.
But it would have been poetry to see you put your little hand up and say, gentlemen, could it possibly be that you didn't believe hard enough in the 48 letters? You'd have brought the house down, Theo, and I wouldn't even have claimed credit for it.
Sorry, James, I've let you down. I apologise.
No, you haven't let me down.
I'm sorry.
You've let the listeners down.
Okay,
You've let LBC down, and most of all, you've let yourself down. What's next, Theo?
Well, we've got... I don't know. I've let everybody down. I'm sorry. Look, the point is they're not going to get the letters. The challenge is not going to happen. Very shortly, we're going to have an announcement about Theresa May's next move. And then we've got the European Council Emergency Summit on Sunday. And
where's Steve Baker? Where's
he was there. He was sitting in the corner.
He was there.
He was sitting in the corner, yes.
Facing the corner with a pointy hat on.
No,
with a big D on the front of it, or a DD in the case of David Davis.
No,
of course.
he was just sitting in the corner, not saying much. He decided not to put himself on the panel.
Did anyone pick up David Davis on his claim yesterday that we could negotiate a free trade agreement in the event of no deal during the transition period that only happens if there's a deal?
No.
Because that would have been a question that wasn't about the document, so we will decline to answer it.
Well, they don't want to... Yeah, no, they don't...
Have you read the document?
I've glanced through it.
Have you come to the bit? Did I imagine it, or did they say that the referendum was in 2017?
No, this is a new document, James.
Another document. Oh my days,
part.
crikey! It's Tuesday. Yes. There must be a new document.
So the old document said there was a referendum in 2017.
Yeah,
which was embarrassment.
Trust these guys, though. Trust these dudes.
That was Sunday's document. Now we have
Tuesday's document.
Fact, not fiction.
Fair of face. Fact, not friction.
Fact, not friction.
Fact, not friction.
Exploding the Myths of Leaving the Customs Union, a joint publication from the European Research Group and Global Britain, and it lists the 17 myths. Myth 1, customs declarations are pieces of paper that are examined and compared with loads at the border.
But David Davis is on the panel, and he thinks that we can do a trade agreement during a transition period that won't exist. So why would anyone listen to them about anything?
Why would anybody listen to them about anything?
Has Jacob Rees-Mogg withdrawn that tweet yet, claiming that food would be cheaper because of Patrick Minford's discredited economic analysis?
I don't think so.
All right.
Okay, that's where we're at, James.
Yeah, keep it cool. Where are you off to now? Narnia?
Don't know. Through the looking glass, I suppose.
Keep in touch, Theo. Stay safe. Seriously, don't let them grind you down. And if Ian Duncan Donuts calls you daft again, tell him he'll have to answer to me, all right?
Will do, James.
Theo Usherwood live from somewhere where a bunch of men were spouting nonsense about Brexit. It's Groundhog Day. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. The time now is 11 o'clock. A lot of love for Theo Usherwood coming in. So overdeveloped is my ego that I find that vaguely threatening. So I spent the news bulletin looking at my book, which is back in the Amazon top 10 and available for $4.99 today. There's a special offer, which means you could buy loads for the people in your life who would benefit most from being shown why they've been lied to, or how they've been lied to for the best part of 30 years, about everything from Muslims to Brexit to immigration to feminism to political correctness. How to be right in a world gone wrong. 4 minutes after 11 is the time. Seb Dance is an MEP. There's a tweet he issued last night which really resonated with me, and I suspect it will with you. He wrote, "There's a kind of incredulity among EU 27 colleagues here. None of them could ever imagine their countries willingly opting to make themselves poorer while subjecting themselves to rules they would no longer have any say over. I'm afraid I can't offer any logical response." And I don't know whether this is logical or not, but there is a constituency of people in this country to whom Theresa May appeared to be speaking directly yesterday. And they are people who think that the circumstances, the geographical circumstances of your birth are a reliable indicator of your human worth. I.e., if you're foreign, you must be a little bit dodgy, which is why she called you all queue jumpers. Every single EU citizen living here rendered a queue jumper, and of course by association 1 million British citizens living in the European Union. They're all queue jumpers, and today on the programme we'll devote a little more time to allowing queue jumpers to come onto the programme and apologise for queue jumping. We've already heard from a medal-winning athlete who should have gone to the Olympics but couldn't because Theresa May kind of put the kibosh on it. Well, she represents Britain. We've heard from a fellow who was so desperate to get up on the ladder and work his way up from the very bottom that he started on the floor of a chicken factory and is now in the web development department of a major tech company. We have spoken to a fellow from Italy who has set up his own business, subcontract work in the disability sector. He was quite emotional, as a lot of my callers have been since that vote came in, but this is, I think, the first time you've been squarely insulted by the actual Prime Minister. So either give me a ring and apologise for being a queue jumper, or tell me what you think Theresa May was playing at. 0345 6060 973. Daniel's in Farnborough. Daniel, what would you like to say?
Hello. It's my better half who's actually the queue jumper.
Okay. Are you going to apologise? You're going to apologise on her behalf. I'm like the Stasi. You're dobbing in your own wife now. This is like East Germany come to life in 2018 Britain. Go on.
There won't be any apology though, because she came over and she worked in the menial jobs that kind of get derided, I suppose, by Theresa May, factory worker and that. But she always wanted to be a police officer. But if you're a foreign national, you have to have lived here 3 or 4 years. I can't think which one it is before you apply.
Right.
So she went through all that and has applied, and is now a police officer and at work now, keeping us safe, really. So
come over here, solving crime.
My main issue with it, what she said yesterday, is kind of anti-aspiration, I think, because I always thought the Tory party was meant to be for aspiring people, you know, work your way up and do all that, but it seems to be we'll have the engineers who are already trained from India, and, you know, it's more from the middle class.
Is it interesting that you say that? I can understand why you say that. I mean, even that might be a little bit too charitable to the Prime Minister. She just insulated herself from accusations of stone-cold racism by saying, oh no, we like Indian software developers and Australian engineers. But she didn't specify who she was talking about when she spoke of the queue jumpers, which means that your wife has no choice but to think she meant her.
I agree. Well, yeah, I think she does mean that, my other half, but I don't think she'd chuck in Italian engineers or French bankers into the same thing. I think it's more.
How do we make the distinction then? And then you're right, because if she is just, we've put a financial ceiling in place, haven't we? If you earn, is it 30,000, or there's going to be a figure that if you don't exceed that threshold, you will not be welcome. It sits in stark relief to the fish and chip shop owner who claims today he can't find anyone to work for him paying the minimum wage. Does your wife take it personally, or as a police officer is she thicker skinned than that?
She's a lot thicker skinned now, but I don't know. We've had talks about whether we're going to go citizenship route or anything like that, because she's been here long enough to do that. But we kind of think, why? Why should we have to?
Well, of course you do. Why should we have to? I mean, you can't. I mean, actually, I don't go in for sort of jingoistic tub thumping, as I'm sure you know, Daniel. But if you had to pick a poster person for why Theresa May was so wrong and so offensive yesterday, can I ask where your other half hailed from originally?
Poland.
Okay, so a Polish-British tax-paying police. So she pays tax on her wages as a police officer in this country. And yesterday, Theresa May called her a cheat.
She also took a pay cut from her previous job to be a police officer, because they're so lowly paid when they start. So
well, this is
what she wanted to do.
Good grief. Well, will you tell her that Theresa May doesn't speak for this country? She speaks only for the weird rump of her own party that she thinks she can appease by being racist. But you can never be racist enough for that lot that Theo was just listening to. There's never ever going to be racist enough for them, because their racism is built on nonsense and fantasy. But thank her for us, and let her know, seriously, Daniel, that what she does is appreciated by the massive majority of people in this country.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. 9 minutes after 11, the husband of a queue jumper there, quite rightly, bringing to the attention of the authorities, i.e. me, the appalling story of his other half, who came over here worked in a menial, low-paid job, disgusting, despicable behaviour, queue jumping, and then aspired to become a police officer, jumped through several hoops, took a pay cut, and now patrols the streets of Farnborough to keep you and I safe. Damn her eyes. Eleanor is in Pimlico. Eleanor, what would you like to say?
Well, I'd like to say that I jumped the queue 23 years ago when I
accept your confession. I accept your confession.
Thank you. I decided to move to the UK from Italy because it was very difficult to find a job there at the time, especially if you just finished university, you didn't have experience.
That's sort of 33 years ago. A lot of British construction workers were making their way to... No, I'm saying 10 years prior to that, a lot of British construction workers were making their way to Germany for similar reasons.
Well, yeah.
Queue jumpers.
Basically, I'd been here when I was at university through the Erasmus scheme for 6 months. Then I went back to Italy, got my degree in political science, and I decided to come back to the UK because I thought it was a very welcoming and stable country. And I've had different jobs since then, and I have always gone through the same selection process as anybody else.
Yes.
And I believe I've been given the jobs I've been given, not because I was a EU citizen, but because I had the skills. That's maybe other people.
But forgive me for interrupting. You're justifying yourself in a way that you wouldn't have done this 5 years ago. I suspect you can't quite believe you found yourself on national radio justifying yourself after 23 years, Eleanor.
I know.
You don't have to justify yourself.
I know I don't, but that's how they've made us feel over the last 3 years almost. All my friends feel exactly the same. I have lots of friends who have either moved back to Italy or are seriously thinking of moving back to Italy because of the hostile environment that's here. You know, for 20 years before the referendum, I never had any friend who'd come to me to say that they've been abused in the street because of the fact that we're speaking Italian or because of the fact that we're speaking English with an Italian accent. And that's happened over the last 3 years. And now I am much more cautious about speaking Italian in the street.
Or on trains. Don't forget on trains, Eleanor. Speaking foreign on trains is the most egregious of offences.
Exactly.
Famously, of course, the words of a man whose wife speaks German to his children.
It's not the first time that this government has been offensive towards foreigners. I remember 2 years ago at the Conservative Party conference when Theresa May went up on stage and said she was going to force it was Amber Rudd that said that she was going to force companies to make a list of all foreign workers.
Yeah, we dealt with that.
And I said to my HR manager, and I said, the moment you have to do that, let me know because I will resign because I don't want to be on any list. I don't think I've done anything wrong to be on a list, and I don't. Even if they said that it's going to be a secret list, but we know secrecy in. You see,
there are two. Really. No, you're right, and that was the speech. It was one of the first clips that went nuts, and when I found echoes of it in Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler.
Exactly, I read that. Yeah.
I mean, it was uncanny, and I was uncomfortable doing it, but the echoes were so loud I couldn't ignore them. But there are two types of politician, I think. So let us imagine, if we can, and I mean, I don't have to imagine it. Go and I presume the Facebook page is groaning under the weight of them at the moment. A proper racist. Someone who is increasingly emboldened to follow Steve Bannon's advice and actually embrace the accusation of racism and almost take pride in being a racist. Now, they are looked at by politicians, and a cynical politician who is not a racist looks at that person and thinks, what can I do to keep them on side? What can I do to win them over? And that, I think, is how you end up with Ed Miliband's mugs about immigration and with Amber Rudd's speech that had echoes of Mein Kampf. And I could be doing Amber Rudd a favour that she doesn't deserve here, but I think she's in that category. It's not a compliment, but I don't think she's one of them. I think she is cynically seducing them. Theresa May, I think, is one of them. I think she feels what they feel. I think she feels a sort of shiver of discomfort at the thought of foreignness, and that's really, really weird.
Well, they should have told us before we came to the UK. I would have gone somewhere else if I'd known that this would be the situation 23 years down the line. You know, all my savings are here. I've got a house. I have a son who was born here, who goes to school here. I've always had jobs in English environments. I've never really worked in an environment just because I was Italian. And now with the plunge in the value of the pound as well, my savings have gone down 20% if I wanted to then move away and go back to Europe. So I feel really angry. I feel really tricked, because they should have told me 23 years ago I would have gone to France or Germany or somewhere else.
I never thought of it like that, because that was the nature of... No, that's what union means. European Union, freedom of movement.
Exactly.
These are great, wonderful things.
It wasn't our decision that UK joined the EU in 1973, and I came here in good faith. And I've just had really bad treatment and abuse in the last 3 years, and nobody.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so gloriously unsurprised. But you know that most of us aren't like that. Well, yeah, most of us are like me. But there comes a point where it doesn't matter anymore. But I hope we never reach that point. We're still fighting. Yeah. We're still fighting. And if I had to put money on it, I'd say the chances of a happier resolution are greater now than they have been since that result came in. But Eleanor, I feel your pain, I truly do. And the number of people who've reported being abused in the street for simply speaking a foreign language, or indeed for speaking the English language with a foreign accent, is absolutely breathtaking. I'll tell you what, if I had ever said publicly or complained publicly about people speaking foreign in the street or on trains or on buses or anywhere like that, and I saw this growing catalogue of abuse, I don't think I could ever show my face in public again. But that's because I've got a conscience. I'm drawn towards two stories for later in the programme. One actually involves Black Friday, and the suggestion this morning that your Black Friday bargain may not be, with some suppliers, quite the bargain you think it is. I don't know quite how I will turn this into a phone-in topic, but if I tell you now where my brain is going, you might be able to help park it when we get there. I'm trying to buy a bed at the moment, or rather Mrs. O'Brien and I are trying to buy a new bed, and it's almost impossible to make the final decision to tick the box or to sign the deal, because it was 40% off on Sunday. No, 20% off on Sunday, and then 40% off yesterday, and then somebody else said, well, waiting for Black Friday. And when I worked in retail, I remember there were rules about what was and was not a bargain, but you could sort of bend the rules by, if you had 100 shops, and if you put something for sale at 500 quid in one shop for X amount of time, then you could put in all the other 99 shops during the sale, you could claim that the discount had come down from the price. I think I've got... Do you see where I'm going with this? How can you tell whether a bargain is really a bargain? Because that's the whole thing about these promotions. They're designed to make sure that the companies running them make more money than they would have done without the promotion. It's like a supersize in McDonald's. And if they're going to make more money, then it's... When is a bargain not a bargain? And before that, a few more apologies. We'll take that up to 11:30. We're allowing the queue jumpers of Britain to apologise for queue jumping. So far, we've had medal-winning athletes, we've had the partner of a police officer, we've had a bloke who worked himself up from a chicken factory floor to the web development department of a major tech company, a gentleman from Italy who has founded his own little business, subcontracting within the disability sector. We've spoken to Eleanor in Pimlico, who came here 23 years ago and has concluded that if she'd known what was going to happen this year, then she'd have gone somewhere else. And what has happened this year, of course, is that a British Prime Minister has stood up in public and called them all cheats, queue jumpers, wrong-uns. And I don't know why. Ionel is in Fulham. Ionel, what would you like to say?
Good morning,
hello,
James, and sorry, I do apologise for my lack of modesty and for being a bit nervous.
Well, the lack of modesty, you're in very good company. For being nervous, there's no need.
Thank you. I have come to UK 17 years ago, and I came from Romania legally to this country, and I have realised how things are working. I started from very, very low job as I was a student at the time, and I've been very fortunate, because the conditions here were really good. I have managed to build up a business. I started a business a while ago, and at the moment we're turning over about £4.5 million. We employ quite a few employees, most of them British or of British origin. And in 2006 just happened to become the UK national karate champion. And it just happened because I was training really, really hard, and I had the honor to represent Great Britain to 2 world championships, karate championships, one in Tokyo and one in Athens. Unfortunately, not very successful. I done my best, but that wasn't necessarily enough. You can't win it always. But yes, since then, as I said, I worked really hard, extremely hard. I have married my wife. We've been together for 21 years, and we came here together, and this is our home now. We got 2 children, and as I said, we just play by the rules all the time. I'm probably paying at the moment in tax about £1 million a year. This is VAT tax and all other type of tax, and there are a few of us. I'm not the only one, and I know entrepreneurs or business people. And as I said, I came here with a suitcase half empty 17 years ago. But it was a welcome environment, and I tried to better myself and to do the best. But the angle I wanted to put on it, James, is I have become a British citizen a few years ago by choice. I went through the naturalization process. I took all the exams. I have bettered myself. I took the English test and everything else, and I have become a British citizen by choice. And I think it's worth a bit more than someone just being born here. And I'm not saying that just, as I said, as a lack of modesty.
I understand.
It's called a queue jumper.
It's a conscious choice that you've made, and the pride that you take is learned.
Please believe me, I work my socks off, and I'm still working extremely hard to pay back about £1 million a year, and I'm not boasting.
No, I know you're not boasting. I can boast enough for both of us. But even if you were boasting, you'd be perfectly entitled to. So I mean.
There's no entitlement, James. Well, what has happened, the climate was encouraging, and they allowed people like me to spend the best time of our years working really hard, and to the opportunity that has been given to us, and I'm very grateful for that.
I kind of need a caller, and I sense it isn't you. I kind of need a caller from your sort of background, with your sort of experience, to tell me to wind my neck in and say, you don't speak for me. I'm not offended at all. I agree with Theresa May, but I sense you're not that caller.
Well, as I said, the way I see it, if the conditions were just laid as they were, and everyone played by the rules, and we are here and we're contributing. I feel more British than Romanian.
Yes, of
course. This is home to me. This is home to my children. And I work extremely hard for them and for me and for everyone else. As I said, I put in the system a lot more than I have taken. I have never claimed a penny in benefits or help.
No, but I hate hearing this, because you're entitled to. It doesn't matter if you have. This is the other thing that's become completely toxified. Think about the amount of tax that you're paying. If you landed on your uppers, you fell off a ladder or something, and you couldn't go to work or whatever it might be, you are perfectly entitled to claim. I'm going to stop calling them benefits. I'm renaming it what it was originally called, the welfare state. It's right-wing journalists that have turned it into benefits, turned it into the notion that it's something that is for the feckless and the dishonest. It's not. But I understand why you feel compelled to say it. Of course I understand.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm one of those Romanians you don't want to be neighbours with. They came here and do this and the others. Like, every time when people are generalizing, I really feel, and I was driving, and I felt that I must call you, because this is another aspect. And as I said, I done this consciously, and I work extremely hard, and it is an honor for me to be British.
And of course, you growing up,
and I've done it by the rules.
I hear you. And growing up under the shadow of Ceausescu, of course, puts into relief what you're saying for people who possibly haven't understood. And I'm sure there aren't many, but you came to Britain and you discovered freedom.
Yeah, and I had the right go at it. I took it with my both hands, and it was here, and this was my opportunity, and my just my opportunity to better myself. And I am an educated person. I have graduated 2 universities, and I tried to do the best in life. But here this is home for me, and now to be called a cheat and a queue jumper just feels a bit unfair.
Let me find some of the people who think that you shouldn't feel that way. I haven't got any. There were a couple earlier on. How dare those European foreigners come over here and speak better English than the native, says James, which is obviously not quite what I'm looking for. I can't find it, but there's some people were saying she didn't say huge. Oh, I don't know what contortions they have to go through these days to kid themselves that they're not staring really ugly rhetoric. Go on.
Lastly, I really thank you for
No, I don't need this. No, we need to stop doing this. We don't. No. You're very good. This is what we do, mate. This is the British way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
the queue jumpers, thank you on their behalf.
On behalf of all the queue jumpers, on behalf of all the people in the queue who got jumped over, thanks for paying £1 million a year in tax. I know it could be what's paying for my children's hospital treatment or their primary school or the roads outside. But hey, as long as you don't speak foreign on a train. 11:28 is the time. Carlos, I haven't really got time for Carlos. I'm going to take a few more on this because it's all gone a bit much. To double down on the rhetoric of the moment, of course, I now have quite a long queue on my switchboard of people waiting to apologise for being queue jumpers. And I will, during the break, try to find some of it's got the slight hint of cured ham. A cut of cured ham traditionally served with pineapple. The name eludes me. But I will find some of the texts and tweets telling all these people why they should chill out and not feel aggrieved at being described as queue jumpers by the Prime Minister of the country, in which, in INL's case, he pays an estimated £1 million a year in tax. He's a karate champion as well, and Yana is what was Yana's thing? Well, it was wrestling. I've just got in here somewhere in my mind an image is forming that we could pick a champion, like in the olden days, like in medieval days. So the ERG could pick Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we'd pick INL, and they could just sort of Harry Hill style fight it out, and then we could get Yana, and I can't off the top of my head think of a particularly stupid woman who represents the Brexit camp, but they could have a little fight as well. But no, seriously. What do you think? What do you think this is? Reality television, where I don't know why, it's like I'm a glutton for punishment. After INL revealed how much tax he thinks he pays in this country after coming here from Romania many, many moons ago, I tried to remind myself of what the statistic was last year from EEA nationals, and I found it. 2015-16, EEA nationals paid £15.5 billion more in income tax and national insurance than they took out in tax credits and child benefit. Just £15.5 billion, up £1.9 billion on the previous year. God, those queue jumpers, eh? Carlos is in Windsor. Carlos, would you like to apologise for queue jumping?
Hi, James. I'm known to jump a few queues in my life. I don't think I'll apologise for this one.
Carry on.
I don't think there is a queue, or that I wasn't aware that there was one.
Of course.
So the story is that I've come to the UK about 14 years ago, and I have not had any skills. So I was a very unskilled worker.
Okay.
I had an opportunity to improve my life and do better, and I took it. Everything that I've achieved in the UK. I've studied in the UK. I've become an IT professional. I work for a very large media firm now, a multinational firm. So I've managed to live the British dream as opposed to the American dream.
Yes.
It works. The country's great.
I suspect people who have a problem with you, and I fear that you're about to tell me that you've encountered people who perhaps have a problem with you since the referendum result came in or since the vote took place. I suppose that people who have a problem with you could be charitably described as having not seen their dreams come true, and they can't, whether it's fair or not, they can't accept that it's their fault that their dreams haven't come true. If they'd worked harder or paid a little bit more attention or endured some difficult circumstances, like our earlier caller who worked in a chicken factory, they really hate the fact that you've done better than them, and they can't accept that it's because you've worked harder or perhaps have more talent than they do, so they have to think it's because you're foreign. And that's what really worries me about the queue jumping rhetoric. In America they call it cutting the line, and it is historically designed to make failures who are natives blame their failure on successes who are not natives. But I hope I'm overthinking it, Carlos.
I won't claim to be more talented or work harder than the next person.
No, but you've done better than them.
I had opportunities available and I took them.
Yes, but they would deny that they had the same opportunities. This is where the argument that you get a better deal than they get, although it's completely bogus, you can see why it's quite seductive, can't you?
Sure, and I felt the attitudes changed slightly or greatly since the referendum. I felt before the referendum, in the lead up to the referendum. In fact, I come from Mrs. May constituency, and I had her at my door, and she was in my living room at the house that I owned, that I paid for. And this was in 2014 when the UKIP was starting to get a lot of traction.
Yes.
And I remember telling Mrs. May, asking her, I said, please be careful about this rhetoric with the UKIP and the fear of foreigners, because we are able to come here, integrate fully, have a great life with our British friends as well. And there's a harmony, like let's not break that. And I feel that that's been broken. And since the referendum result has come in, I have felt more, I've been questioned more. There's been more dilemmas when I meet someone at the pub, for example, and I'm telling them what I do or where I live or the kind of house that I have. I feel, and maybe I'm paranoid as well. Maybe I feel this in other people, but I feel like there's a sense of an envy or of I have to justify myself. Oh yeah, but I had to work hard. Oh yeah, but I had to have these opportunities available to me. Before the referendum, I didn't feel that.
It is as if they're being emboldened, and that phrase, cutting the line in America, does seem to be echoed in that phrase, jumping the queue, yesterday. What do you think you'll do? I mean, are you thinking differently about the future from how you have before, or are we, I mean...
I do. I'm an European citizen, and you had a caller earlier, Jonel, I think his name was, he mentioned how proud he is of being British and so on, and I respect that. But for me, my identity is not British. I do not wish to go through the British citizenship or even the residency stuff, because I believe that I have certain rights that were given to me by previous decisions that I feel I should continue to enjoy, and I don't want to go and swear an oath to a monarchy that I may not believe in just because it benefits my personal circumstances. So I still want to remain true to my roots and to my identity, but fully integrated in British society.
Which is the deal you were offered, which is the deal that Eleanor in Pimlico was particularly poignant in describing. That is what you say is the terms and conditions, and we're now tearing up that contract and expecting you to keep to your side of it while we completely renege on ours. Can you remember what Theresa May said to you in your sitting room when you warned her or asked her not to indulge?
I do. I remember it vividly. She told me many times not to worry, and that the country would thank me for my efforts and for my contribution to the economy and society. She said we value foreign workers that come here and contribute to our society, as it seems you have done.
Do you feel that holds true today?
I was reassured. I was reassured at the time.
And now?
Yeah. I feel sorry for her in many ways, and she's doing the job with, to borrow your words, she's been dealt a bad hand as well. So it's not.
Yeah, but she didn't have to blame you for it.
I know, but it goes beyond. I can't just take my personal story and expect the country tune to go by that. It's
Brexiters do.
Things. Yeah, no, they do. But then I also have an interesting topic, if I may, just quickly.
Of course.
My mother is here as well. She married a British citizen a few years ago in 2014. And she's got British citizenship. She's gone through the process, and at the referendum, she was allowed to vote, as was my stepdad, who's a British citizen, and they both voted for leave. So you have a European migrant, my mother, voting for leave, along with my stepdad, who's British, voting for leave. He, by the way, he's a left-leaning Labour supporter, so he's not a right-wing person, if you like.
This ludicrous Lexit.
There's a divide and there's a dichotomy across the gender, age gaps, family ties. It's just dividing the nation entirely, and I can't understand why. I mean, my mother voted because she didn't like the European Union, the unelected stuff, and then the bureaucracy and all the other, and like a sovereignty. She says she voted for that, but
I can think.
Referendum.
You know what you can get them both for Christmas, don't you, Carlos?
It's I have some ideas.
I've done enough. 11:41 is the time. What a lovely call. Thank you. There's principle there as well, which is quite rare these days, isn't it? The idea that I could become a British citizen, but I in my soul of souls, I don't want to be. I just want to carry on enjoying my freedoms as a European citizen, and that, of course, is what we're waving goodbye to. Theresa May sitting in his sitting room, promising that his contribution, but it's like an outsider's contribution, isn't it? Do you think this is learned behaviour, or do you think it's genetic? Do you think it's actually an inherited trait, is that you are either frightened of strangers or you're not? And you need people who are frightened of strangers back in the day, in case they kind of invaded your village or ransacked your valley. You needed people who say, I don't know him, therefore I hate him. And then you needed people who are the opposite of that in order to make sure that civilization actually progressed and that your village could actually grow and do trade with other villages. So you've got your xenophobe trait or DNA, which you need to protect yourself from strangers who wish you ill, and the only way you can be sure that you're protecting yourself from strangers who wish you ill is by going on the attack against all strangers. I think the Greek word xenos means stranger, literally. And then you've got the other people who are responsible for progress and civilization and cooperation and unions, and they are the people who, of course, accept that sometimes by treating people as equals, you will open the door to somebody who doesn't deserve your respect sneaking through, but that's got nothing to do with where they were born, because you've got a village full of xenophobes back at home. There we go, we just solved humanity. What are we going to do in the third hour? Bella is in Wood Green. Bella, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello there. I would start by saying thank you for taking my call. I've been listening to your show for quite a while now, ever since the referendum.
Good man.
And but this one I feel very strong about. Yes. From what I heard from the Prime Minister, us saying that we jump in the queue. Well, I would like to explain to her on how we've jumped the queue. Myself, I came in this country about 9.5 years ago with nothing, with pretty much nothing. I used to be homeless. I used to sleep on the streets for about 3 months until I had my first job, and my first job was in the car wash.
Blimey.
Now, when I went to the car wash to take this job, there was no queue to jump. My second job was in a restaurant, washing dishes and floors, and when I went there, there was no queue there as well. And then I had very various of these jobs. You know, I've done pretty much all of the low paid and unwanted jobs probably, but there was a start for me. This is how it started. Yes. Now I made it. I like to think, and I'm really happy. I've made it. I have a very, very decent life, and I'm very, very happy in this country. I'm just really unhappy with the way people think that we come here and we take what is theirs. We take what is available. We don't take what is theirs.
But the less you've got, I suppose, the less I have, the more easily I could be seduced by the idea that it's your fault I haven't got a new car. It's your fault I haven't got a nice telly. It's your fault I haven't got a higher wage. I do see how it works. It's not rocket science. It's well, whatever the opposite of rocket science is. It's really simple.
I think this is a country, I think this is a wonderful country, and it's a country in which if you want to do something with your life, you would make it. Whether you have a Romanian sitting next to you at the queue or not, or is trying to jump the queue, if you were here before, you grew up in this society, you grew up in this culture, you know exactly what to do to have a good living, to have a fair life. And if it's not done, then it's not done. Then if you don't want to do it, I'm going to be at the queue, and I'm waiting in the queue.
Can you give me an idea?
You know, I've waited from the bottom of the queue to the top.
I do. I love that line. I'll never forget that line. When I took my job in the car wash, there wasn't any queue to jump.
No, there wasn't.
I hear you. Thank you, Bella.
There wasn't.
No, thank you. Thank you for reminding everybody listening to this programme about reality as opposed to racist fantasies, which is sadly what I think we're increasingly close to concluding Theresa May was selling yesterday. Dissenting voices are welcome. 0345 6060 973. Although, of course, my favourite tweet of the day involves someone claiming that I can edit while you're talking. I have what was the phrase he used? I think there's a lot of Russian bots out at the moment, and I appear to be moving very near the top of their wanted list. But someone tried to claim on Twitter earlier that I have up to the second software editing software, which means that while I'm talking to you, I can edit what you're saying so that you end up sounding silly. That'll be it. It's 11:46. I'm suffering a bit, to be honest with you, from just a sense that there are other issues that happen and that matter. But the more I talk to people about what's going on with regard to Brexit, the more I wonder why anyone's talking about anything else. The sense of urgency now is acute, and the people who are leading us into oblivion are still at large. Mikey Smith is the one of the politics correspondents on the Mirror. He's just rounded off his coverage of that comedy meeting earlier today between Ian Duncan Donuts and Rees-Mogg the Mewling Pencil and sundry other half-wits and deadbeats. David Davis tried to run off to avoid answering whether he'd sent in a letter yet. Then he realised he'd lost his bag, panicked a bit, eventually found it propped up against a pillar. Then he ran off. David Davis, man of action, tough guy, a man who gets things done, but won't answer a question and can't even look after his own satchel. But hey, the country's safe in his hands. A veritable Churchill for our times. 11:52 is the time, and Sarah is in Acton. Sarah, what would you like to say?
Hi, Hi, James.
Hello,
Hi. First-time caller and a huge fan of you and your show.
You're very welcome, but we're banning compliments for the rest of the programme. I've had my fill. I won't be able to get out of the studio.
You cannot do that.
I won't be able to get out of the studio. Thank you, though. What made you pick up the phone?
So, I've been listening to your show every day, and I've been wanting to speak to you every day, and today I thought it was the day. So, first of all, me and my husband are French. My husband lived here since he was a teenager. I joined him after we got engaged, and we've been married. We have a baby boy, etc. So, first of all, I'd like to say that we did not, I have to agree with the previous caller, that we did not jump any queue. We had other choices. We lived in different countries, different places all over the world, and we have decided to settle here. It was a choice. I guess, first of all, using nationalities was not very nice from the Prime Minister. I think if it was a very silly attempt at saying that everyone is going to be treated equally. I didn't think it was nice of her.
Well, I mean, that's the charitable reading of it, and it's important to recognise that is probably what she, apart from some of the choices of language, she would argue that that's all she meant. But of course, that makes a mockery of treaties. It makes a mockery of international agreements. It makes a mockery of the pillars of the 4 pillars of the European Union, which renders our relationship with France different from our relationship with Australia or India.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'd like to say is that this whole Brexit debate has been a huge eye-opener for us. Yes. We are no longer sure that we have made the right choice by settling here, by calling it home. And that is for one reason, is that we have made this choice not because we were better off financially over here, but because it was a country, or at least London was a city that we could have called home, where we were never told that we would have been treated differently because we were from France. We have genuinely felt it was a place for us. But now we're really questioning this choice. My husband has recently lost his job because he had a boss who was a bully. It was a huge thing for us this year. Yeah. And we actually realized that, first of all, the legal system was of no help despite him being bullied. We have to rely now on my salary to survive until he finds a job. And despite the fact that he earned quite a good money, and he literally shared his salary with the taxman, but now we have no support because we're not. But that's fine. That is fine. But the problem is, and what I'd like to say is that the biggest learning for us is that the UK did not offer much more than what other countries had to offer in Europe for us. We lived in Switzerland, we lived in France, we lived in the Middle East, and the last place we were in was Switzerland. And honestly, we regret leaving there. We left there because it wasn't a place that with our hearts we could have called home. Right. It was the UK.
I understand.
But now we're like, you know what? We would have been much better off financially, at least, now that we have a son. It's a big burden for us to think about where we'll be in 6 months if my husband doesn't find a job.
So you felt a sort of cultural affinity with Britain that you didn't feel with Switzerland. Because Switzerland can be quite an anodyne country, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, what made me fall in love with this country is when I came here in 2010, I applied for a lot of jobs, went for a lot of interviews, and nobody has ever asked me what my nationality was or where I came from, despite the fact that it was very obvious I was not from the UK.
Yes.
I'm actually Algerian originally.
Yes.
Nobody has ever asked me where I came from. They saw that my CV had experience from different countries in the world, and that's all they looked at. They never asked me where I came from.
Not only are you a queue jumper, Sarah, you're one of those citizens of nowhere that the Prime Minister told us about.
Exactly. I mean, eventually I became French. I thought that would eliminate the problems of having to have a residency in the UK, but hey, that's my luck. So I think that's it in a nutshell for me. Well, again, like I said, we chose this country with our hearts. It doesn't
make sense to you, does it? I say because I mean I stare and stare and stare at this story as someone who will be affected, but not profoundly affected. My motivation is British people who are already badly off and are going to be worse off, and then of course people like you and all my other callers today who just signed up to a deal and kept to the rules and kept your half of the bargain, and in return you're being insulted by the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. I mean, we bought a flat here 8 months ago, and now we're like, oh my God, what have we done?
Well,
why did
at
we
least
do it?
At least you won't lose money on the flat unless things go well. I can't even say that.
No, well, we've literally bargained on that.
You'll be all right.
Because if this turns out to be a bad investment, then you know what? It's really sad. But then I think one more thing that I'd like to add, which really breaks my heart, is that the level of arrogance that I'm hearing from other callers on other shows makes me so angry that I have misjudged the social composition of this country.
Yes.
I hear people saying we have to leave Europe, we have to leave those people, and we'll have to deal with the consequences later. I mean, why?
Yeah.
Why? I mean,
you know
why?
Blue passports and fish.
Do you think so?
Yeah. I've asked them. That's why they don't ring me anymore.
I'm even more angry now.
I keep asking them, and there's nothing left. There's never anything left except racism, blue passports, and fish. Apart that's the ones that are, in the category that you described. There's plenty of other reasons to have voted leave. You were expecting some sort of, oddly enough, a Norway or a Switzerland type arrangement arguably could have been portrayed as being better than what we had at the time, but that would have involved retaining freedom of movement, and the people you're talking about care more about freedom of movement than they do about anything else. They can't wait to give up their freedom of movement if it means that somebody like you might have your life diminished. And it was those people that Theresa May was directly addressing yesterday.
Yes, and by the way, just one more thing. We didn't steal anybody's job. My husband has been headhunted because of the skills and the language he had to offer. I have never taken a single penny. We have never taken money of benefits, and hopefully we'll never have to. We don't want that.
Yes,
and everybody, I think, is working really hard, and I genuinely believe that they love this country. That's why they come and settle here.
This was the point Lionel made about making a conscious decision to want to be British, having grown up in Romania under Nicolae Ceausescu's totalitarian regime, and that is a point that I think all Brits miss, even relatively enlightened Brits like me. I never quite had the cojones to try and make a life somewhere else. I fancied it. Mrs. O'Brien was up for it many moons ago, but I was too scared. And so we like to portray people who've got the guts to uproot and try to not only broaden their horizons, but contribute to and benefit from a country other than the one they were born in. We don't quite get it. Still, despite the million citizens doing precisely that in European Union countries.